republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight, the results of the election for officers of the Tea Party. President, yours truly, Pastor Ernie Sanders. Vice President, Deborah Sally. Treasurer, Carrie Brockman. And Secretary, Elsie Carson. Raise your hands, folks, so they can all see those three pretty women back there. We are going to have a Fiddle for Freedom concert update. And Skip, are you guys about ready to go? Okay. We're going to also have an update on the Geauga County Mental Health Board and survey. And I want to introduce our speaker tonight, Kim Laurie. Kim Laurie is pretty. No, more than that. Kim is president of the Mentor 912 Project and the 2014 Republican candidate for Lake County Commission. And she's going to connect some dots up here tonight, folks, and provide a context for that thing called regionalism. And this presentation will provide a solid background as well as where are we now, synopsis on, so you'll know what to look for while opponents of the fundamental transformation continue their attacks on individual choice and private property rights. In other words, communism. That's virtually what it is. So, with that, well, I will just, let's get started. We want to start with, are you going to start first?
I think so. I'm the warm-up show.
Okay. He's the warm-up man.
I'm the warm-up show. So, this must be church because everybody's sitting in the back. I fully expected there to be more people tonight, and the people that did not show up tonight are going to miss one heck of a presentation. Kim does a fantastic job. She's a little bit more entertaining than me, so you're going to see things in a different way. She's talking about the WACA and some other stuff.
I'm even more entertaining than you.
Well, that's a true statement.
Can I just interrupt 1 second? I'm sorry, Steve. Folks, obviously, you see these. We ask you to fill these out because we got to let people know that the parks should be for everybody, not just for people that are wealthy and want to ride their horses through the park. So if you would fill these out, this would be. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I'm actually here to talk about the survey that went out from Mental Health Board. I'm going to give you a few more insights into that. Many of you here have heard about the survey. Who has not heard about the survey? Anybody here not heard about the survey? Okay, I'll give you a quick update. I want to give you some more tidbits out of the survey, and we really need to ramp up opposition to this. So I'll give you a quick update and tell you how to do that. But we talked about the survey, so you know what the survey is, right?
Yeah.
Sent out from the Mental Health Board, and right here on the bottom of the survey, I have a copy of the survey. I was going to put this into presentation material, but I thought it would just distract from what I want to say, so I didn't put the distraction up there. But if you look right here on the bottom of the survey, it says revised to meet the new federal core standard. Do I need to say anything more about why the survey is a bad thing? The survey is all about asking our kids questions like, how much heroin have you taken? How much marijuana have you taken? How much bath salts have you sniffed? How much? They go on and on and on about all the various things that kids can get involved with. And in many cases, it introduces kids to a concept. They're sitting there, might be 10 years old, and thinking to themselves, geez, I didn't know I could get high in bath salts. Mom's got some at the house, maybe I'll go home and try it. Okay, so there's concepts like that baked into here, which is maddening in and of itself. And you would think that adults, through the Mental Health Board and through the school systems, would read this survey and say, no, but the enticement for money is too great. Pride, who puts the survey out, put out a study. I have so much material on this. Put out an executive summary on the results. They also put out some behavioral studies, behavioral risk studies. And the interesting thing about this is Pride, the company that produced the survey, who makes, I think it was $16,000 per incident. When every time they do the survey, they make $16,000. And they're doing these all over the country and so on and so forth. So what's in it for Pride is money. They put out the results for the survey, Pride put out the results for the survey, saying how good the survey was. The school board reads the material from the Pride and says, this must be a great survey, it's got great results, I think I'll give this $16,000 survey. And of course, if we challenge it, well, the results are good, it says so right here, by Pride, who's making $16,000.
Skip, is that an administrative selection option to go for the test or board driven?
This, well, it was
Makes a
driven by
difference.
Jim Taylor, who is the president of the board. Let me give you a little insight on how boards work. Or, excuse me, Jim Adams,
Jim Adams.
not Jim Taylor, sorry.
It's being driven for grant money.
Yes, but let me give you a little insight, and Kim will talk to you a little bit about this. We sat on an NOACA board on Friday. Are you going to talk about the NOACA board?
I'm going to give a little update on Friday. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't want to steal her thunder on the NOACA board. I also am a member of the Geauga County Planning Commission board. I just had a conversation with somebody about that board today. How many people here are on boards?
Oh,
Okay, you on a board? Okay. I don't know how the boards are that where you go. Most of the boards that I attend, the board members don't know that the board is in control.
right.
The director or the president thinks that he's in control. The board members were appointed to oversee the director or the president, and yet they don't know their function. And so if you go to a planning commission meeting, Dave Dietrich happens to be our planning commission leader, somebody will come in and present, this happens to do with county, somebody wants to develop something, they'll come in and make a presentation, I want to do this, development, whatever it happens to be. The board members sit there, oh, that's interesting. Dave Dietrich gives his input, this is what I think, bing, bing, bing. The board members go, oh yeah, we'll agree with that, and then they vote, and it's a yes. Very little discussion, very little pushback, very little thinking. That's the way this survey, I'm guessing, went out. I wasn't on the board at the time that this was decided upon. But generally speaking, the meetings that I go to with Jim Adams, is he comes out, he says, this is, I'm the expert, I got a doctorate, and I think we ought to do this. The board members who don't have the background and expertise don't realize what their job is to challenge him, to ask him questions, to see the survey, because none of them had read the survey before it went out. They didn't know what their jobs was when they were appointed, and that was a failure of the appointing authority. I just took office in January as county commissioner. The commissioners appoint some members on the mental health board. I just talked to our county administrator saying, our board members don't understand what their job is. I want to meet with them. The past commissioners never talked to, they appointed them, they found volunteers, but they never sat down and had a conversation with them. This is your responsibility. That's the way it is with 99.9% of the boards that you will see in the public sector. When we went to the Friday NOACA board, Grace Colucci, $180,000 a year, public servant. I don't think she sees herself that way, but Grace Colucci, $160,000 a year, running an organization that cost us 20% overhead, basically steers the boat. There were 3 resolutions that we voted to oppose. I think there were 3, right? There was a real fun one. Dan Troy, who was Kim's opponent, was the head of the governance committee. The governance committee basically kind of manipulates the subcommittees. They wanted to stack our transportation committee. The transportation committee is where all the work gets done in NOACA. And I know I'm boring you to death here, but there's going to be some fun that I'm going to tell you about in a second. And so the transportation committee is the committee that Joe Cattell sits on. He puts his road projects into that, and that's where the actual guts of road projects and the money that we get comes out of. So NOACA wasn't happy with the fact that there's not enough bicycle trails, not enough mass transit, not enough other stuff as projects in that list. So they wanted to appoint a bicycle representative and a transit representative and a Port Authority representative and a rail representative. So they wanted to stack the committee with more representation to lean it to the left a bit. And Dan Troy heads up the committee. Normally what's done is the NOACA staff comes in, they say this is what we recommend. The committee goes, oh, looks good to me. Yes. And so then it's passed out of the governance committee to the general board. The fun thing that happened was that Valerie McCall, who's the left-hand person of Mayor Jackson, and when they use the term left, that's kind of code language for progressive communism. And so, very left-leaning, and I actually like Valerie. She's a very articulate, bright woman, just not conservative. And so, Dan Troy, who's the head of the committee, thinking everything was just going to be rubber stamped his way, was challenged by Valerie McCall. It kind of shocked us. We weren't ready for that. There were some other folks that were there that spoke up, talked about minority representation on the various committees.
Hey, Skip, mentioned who started that whole conversation. Remember who started that whole thing?
Wasn't that Valerie?
Was it Blake?
I thought that was Valerie that started that. Oh, Blake Rear, who is one of our county commissioners. By the way, the three of us, Blake, Kim and I, were sitting together and kind of bonding a little bit. We were the only no votes that were happening in the NOACA that day. And, well, with the exception of this one event. So in any case, well, apparently Blake started, I didn't remember him chiming in, but there was some question about the imbalance. Oh, that's right, I do remember him starting it. There was a question.
He made a comment afterwards, well, I didn't need to start anything.
Yeah, there was a question about imbalance on the committee because this is supposed to be a transportation committee. And then Valerie McCall chimed in, and then there were some other people that chimed in. And so it got into this robust discussion, and Dan Troy, how many people know Dan Troy in here? You know who Dan Troy is? Okay, you have to go out and watch the video. It's still on your website?
What video? Oh, the interview?
Of Dan Troy, yeah, interview.
Probably.
Yeah, go to Kim's website or Facebook page and look at Dan Troy. That's funny in and of itself. You gotta get some popcorn, sit down, you'll enjoy yourself. So anyway, so Dan Troy gets up, he runs to the end of the table, he's puffing and puffing and he's pacing around at the end of the table. In a meeting, Grace Gallucci, who is usually calm and collected, didn't like the fact that Dan Troy was huffing and puffing at the end of the thing. Me and Blake and Kim are just sitting there chuckling. We're enjoying this because this never happens. Everybody just rubber stamps stuff. And so Grace goes running down. She's with Dan Troy at the end of the table. They're kind of panting around a little bit at the end of the table. There's a real show. And then they came back to the table. Dan sat down, and Grace sat down, and we had this big, robust discussion, and we had to do a roll call vote. I don't ever remember it being a roll call vote in the NOACA. They did a roll call vote. There were 9 of us that opposed, against 44. Of course, it passed. Sorry for the long-winded way of saying, when you go to boards, generally speaking, the outcome will always be in the direction that was provided by the staff, unaccountable, unelected directors. NOACA steers those meetings. Things are going to go their way. There were 3 resolutions. Stacking the committee was one. Trying to move dollars around MPOs, that's dirty and smells bad. That was another one. And there was a third one. There was a transfer of dollars out of TCLI to create a common hub for transportation for the Republican upcoming convention. So you can put bus and trains and rail and cars and bicycles and everything in the same hub. And that's going to be very important for us because once the convention leaves, everybody's going to want to go to that one common location. So anyway, sorry for that tangent. Back to these for just a second. And it's just going to be a second. I'm not going to take very long. I want to make a couple of points. Results. I just spent the day reading through various results from these studies. And there's a whole stack of results that they provided. I'm going to summarize what I found in the results, and I have scanned these. Anybody wants a copy of the surveys and or the results, let me know. But if you summarize the results say things like this. Peer pressure makes a difference in a child's life. kids who are home alone get into more trouble than kids that aren't. Kids that hang out with bad kids are more likely to get into trouble than kids that hang out with good kids. Kids that take drug and alcohol are going to get into more trouble than kids that don't take drugs and alcohol. We spent millions of dollars, thousands and thousands of these things. We put our kids at risk by giving them a survey that could potentially, interest them in taking drugs, to find out what my grandmother used to tell me when I was growing up. I don't know about you, but I think that's wrong. And we have adults, people who are professionals in the mental health area, who will claim that that's worth it. That tells them something. Now they can go do something else. You know what that something else is? Spend your tax dollars. Because they have to come up with a new program now to solve the problem of peer pressure, or solve the problem with kids taking alcohol, seeking alcohol out of mom's cabinet, or whatever the case happens to be. So you're going to spend millions of dollars trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And we know, in one of the studies back in 1968, we know how productive or how effective their programs have been. So have drugs and alcohol gone down or up since 1968?
Depends on who you ask.
We had a war on drugs. Have we succeeded or failed? That's right. And so everything that you can discover out of these surveys, the most important thing you can discover out of these surveys and that whole survey program is that we're screwing up and we don't know what we're doing, and we should stop the surveys and come up with a different approach. And I've been talking to various organizations within the county who I help fund in some cases, who I work with in other cases, and I basically told them that very same thing. We've got these programs, some are not working. We need to be adults. We need to start facing the truth and say this program is not working. One of the ladies who heads up one of the programs, I'm not going to say her name, said, well, what do we do? I said, for crying out loud, you're older than 50 years old. You're an adult. You're in a leadership position. You know the number for your state house representative. Call up your state house representative, your state senator, get your county commissioners together. Let's solve this problem. Let's stop being blind and dumb, and let's find an approach that's going to work and stop wasting money on stuff that's not.
You want them to work.
What's that?
You want them to work.
I want them to start thinking differently. And I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not agree with this. I was trying to make a point with an individual the other day. We were talking about narcotics, opiate narcotics, the most addictive substance on the face of the earth. Although I just gotten some recent information from some MDs I'm going to be talking about bringing in here shortly. But in any case, I made the comment to this lady just to make a point, just to get an emotion stirred up in her a little bit so I can get some honest answers out of her. I said, look, I have an answer for solving this problem. You take the folks that are addicted to heroin, you throw them in jail for 60 days. They will be cleaned up when they leave. And they're going to go through a lot of pain and aggravation in the process because they're going to go through withdrawal. When they get out, you put a shock collar on. If they go anywhere near a drug, you shock the hell out. After 6 months, Pavlov's situation is going to take over. They're going to think that they're going to get shocked if they go near that narcotic, and they won't want to take it anymore. Now, she was supping for air and said, oh my God, you're cruel, you're heartless, da, da, da.
Sounds good to me.
I said that to her to make a point. We have got to start thinking about these things in hard ways. We can't be soft and feely to solve these problems. A little bit like Benjamin Franklin solving poverty. You make people uncomfortable in poverty, they will get out of poverty. The interesting thing is, following that conversation with her, I talked to an MD doctor whose practice is all about treating for drugs. He said, you're more right than you know. Your approach, or at least your thought process, was more right than you know.
Yeah, but Skip, they had a program over at the college, and they brought in that national guide with regard to drugs. And Joneses and I were there, and several other people. There was such a poor turnout. NAMI didn't promote the program, and the basic essence of that was saying that the biggest pushers of drugs are your physicians. But I mean, the thing is I hear what you're saying, but a lot of people don't want to listen to it.
Well, there's a lot of challenges, and part of the challenges are ignorance about what the real problems are. And people who are in the healthcare industry, and I'm not going to use doctors as an example, the whole industry, the whole taking care of drug industry is incented not to cure the problem because they make money when people come through the door. And so if we're gonna solve this problem, we gotta get that on the table and start talking about reality instead of talking around reality. With that said, back to the survey, and this is gonna be the last thing that I say. On Tuesday, we were told, and the survey came through the mental health board. We're challenging the mental health board to at least have a conversation. So far, they've not allowed us to have a conversation. We, as the county commissioners, needed some legal advice to see what we could do, if there's anything we could do to change the course of things. As a result of us hiring an attorney, the mental health board decided they wanted to hire an attorney, thinking that we were going to do something. And the county commissioners have to pay for it. We have to pay for both sides. And so Jim Flays, our prosecutor, came in and told us we're going to have to pay for their attorney, or he was asking us if we wanted to pay for their attorney. Ross Biddle-Larry and I said no. And so we're expecting the next order of business for them to come back with a court order forcing us to pay for their attorney. There's going to be some other outcomes for that. I can't get into it for legal reasons at this point in time. But let me ask you to do this. If you care about the kids in this county, if you care about your kids, your grandkids, whatever, what you can do is go to the schools and make it known to the schools, or at least ask the schools, to read the surveys. They come out with a positive opt-out. If they want to give these silly surveys, and parents are in favor of that, at least give them a positive opt-out. In other words, they have to sign a form for their kids to take the survey, versus a passive opt-out, which is what they have today. If somebody does not send in an opt-out, then they give the kids a survey. It's not optional. And so ask the schools to be responsible, the school boards and the principals to be responsible. It's up to us to hold the system accountable. Now, we don't have enough people in this room, unfortunately, to have a great impact. And so I'm going to ask you to reach out to your friends and your neighbors and talk to them about it. In addition to that, reach out to mental health board, write them a letter, write them an email, get a hold of them and say, look, at the very least, we need to have a public discussion about this. They were supposed to have a meeting and allow public discussion. They manipulated the whole meeting. They allowed individuals 2 minutes to talk at the end of the meeting, and they cut it off. They only allowed a few individuals to talk. That's not public input. That's not having a public discussion. And so demand of the mental health board, which is paid for by your tax dollars, levy tax dollars, reach out to the board members on the mental health board. They're working for the community, supposedly, and ask them to talk about this and ask them to do the responsible thing. At the very least, they owe everybody the opportunity to have a discussion about this. And so far, they've denied anybody a real, honest, open discussion about this. I'm not giving up on this. I think our kids are too important. I think that this is nonsense. There's no way you can get productive results out of a survey like this, and I would challenge it all day long. But, you know, I'm doing all I can do. I need help. If we don't get people to step up, then we're not going to be able to get it. Go ahead, Tom.
Skip, do you know when their levy is up?
They just passed the levy.
They just renewed
Yeah,
it.
they just renewed it.
When does it come
So
up
it's going to
again?
be a while. But we can have an impact. I mean, the positive news in June, there's 3 board seats that are coming up. And so we're going to be starting to look for replacements for the board members now. Over time, we'll be able to make a difference in changing the direction of mental health. That's not going to help us with the immediate situation of these surveys going out to our kids. And no surveys should be like that. The county commissioners appoint a number of them. And we're in the process. We just named 2, which are good guys who are on the board. We're going to name 3 more in June, which will give us a majority, and then we can start making some changes. So we do have another option outside of legal action. Really, there's not much legal action you can take yet. So, you know, we're looking at some things, and let me leave you with this, and then I'm going to ask Kim to come up. I was talking to Ralph King. How many people know Ralph King? President of the Tea Party in Cleveland. Very bright guy. Happens to put in road projects for using the WACA dollars. So he sees things on the ground as an outcome of what happens through the WACA, and he's got some really interesting things to say. I was hoping he was going to be here tonight. But he said 2 things to me that were they got me thinking a little bit. And that is, we didn't get here overnight. In other words, the progressives have been working for years, decades in some cases. It took 5 years or 10 years for them to wiggle their way into the system. And we've got Steve Hambley, who is a Republican State House representative from Medina County, who's as left progressive as any Democrat you've ever seen. And he got into the system. He got convinced people that he was a good guy. He got elected in. He was a county commissioner for a while, and now he's a State House representative. We have all kinds of people on the NOACA board, 44 of them, or actually 41 of them, if you want to take Blake and Kim out of the equation, that are there to pursue an agenda. Now, it takes time to undo that, and we have to start focusing at the local level on doing that. I was elected commissioner. Hopefully people won't come with pitchforks and a rope and take me out of there anytime soon. And so I'll have an opportunity to make a difference. With you guys, with your help, I'll be able to make a difference. We need to make more change than that. There's an election coming up this fall. We have a whole bunch of trustees in the Jogger County area that are up for election. At the next meeting, I'm going to bring a wall chart with every township listed. And I'm going to bring a whole list of the township trustees. And I want every one of you between now and then get to know your township trustees and which one should stay and which one should go. And we need to circle them. We need to start right now identifying who's going to replace them because it's not too soon. And we've got an expert in this room on how to win elections. And I'm not mentioning any names, Joe, but we can get you help in helping to understand how to get these folks elected. Let's start focusing on what we can focus on locally, because that'll ripple up. We've got to start setting the stage right now so that in 5 years from today, we're not looking back saying, geez, we wish we had done something. Because it is our time to make a difference.
Do I get to say one thing on that subject?
Sure.
It's not too early for people to start thinking about running because the filing deadline is the first week of August. So, you know, these are all nonpartisan. The township trustee races, they're all nonpartisan elections. You know, there's no primary. There's one filing date in August. Everybody goes straight through to the November ballot. And shame on me for that. Well, I think this would be the second where you have two.
One trustee.
There's one trustee in the fiscal officer in this cycle. Oh, that's right.
And next year, we're going to have significant elections up, and it is not too soon to start thinking about state house seats, state senate seats,
Congress.
Congressional seats, a senator seat. You know, we got to get out of the box here a little bit, and we're at the right point right now to start making some of these decisions. So with that said, I'm going to give up the floor. I've taken much more time than I was planning on it, and let me tell you something. You can find nobody more knowledgeable than Kim on the subject coming up, and you're going to hear more than the whacker because she can talk about the connectivity plan. With that said, Kim, why don't you why don't you give her a hand? About coming up tonight. I told her she didn't have to worry about you guys. You weren't gonna embarrass her. So.
Well, I don't know how entertaining I'm going to be. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm told that my voice is you know, little.
Yeah,
even with the microphone, I still end up with people doing this in the back. So there are a couple seats available up front if anybody wants to come up here. Welcome to get a little closer. I'm going to ask because this is there's a lot of information in this presentation, so I'm going to try to get through it as quick as I can. I don't want you guys to have to be here past your bedtimes.
We just nap in the presentation. We don't have to worry.
Okay, that's fine. Take shifts or something. So if you don't mind holding questions till the end, unless we hit a point where you don't understand something, or if I don't explain something clearly and you need more clarification, go ahead and interrupt me, because I kind of have this set up so that the information builds upon the previous, if that makes sense. So when Skip was talking about how, you know, we didn't get here in a day, it took, you know, 5-10 years. It actually kind of took 100 years, because that's as long as the progressives have been working at this. And so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to take us back 100 years, but I'm going to take us back a few decades so that we can kind of see where the ball really started to get rolling when it comes specifically to regionalism. Okay.
No, but I think.
How many are familiar with regionalism and or Agenda 21? Okay, good. So you're going to hear people in office and in positions of power, such as on the NOACA board, use the term collaboration. And they like the term collaboration because it sounds nice. You know, it's teamwork, let's all work together, and that's great. What you have to understand is there is a distinct difference between regionalism and collaboration. So collaboration is good. That's where you have, you know, like maybe two different cities who, you know, one can't afford its own fire department, so it might contract with its neighboring city, and it's like a pay-per-use kind of service. The neighboring city still maintains ownership of the trucks and everything. They don't pool their tax dollars. That's collaboration. That's good. That's a smart way to save money. What regionalism is when you have centralized planning, you have tax sharing, so that you have two
Ask her to
different
speak a little
entities.
louder for the camera. Just-
I'm kind of speaking as loud as I'll try. You can move it closer if that might help.
Well, yeah, I need to sit down.
Okay. So if you have like two different cities, okay, who want to create a regional fire department and they're going to share their tax dollars, buy the trucks, then they have to create a little board to determine, you know, who's going to maintain the trucks, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. What happens in those situations is the taxpayers, because you don't get to vote for those board members, you only vote for your own city's representation, you lose control to that board. That makes sense? You lose control of your tax dollars. So that's kind of like a benchmark of, is this regionalism or is this collaboration? Now there's regionalism efforts all across the country. All these little dots, this is as of 2013, so I'm sure currently there are even more dots. These are individual grants that were given out by various organizations. You have HUD grants, DOT is Department of Transportation grants, and EPA grants. And I just want to point out right now the logos in the bottom right-hand corner, those are the logos for HUD, EPA, and DOT, and you're going to see them kind of throughout. Okay, so we're going to go back to 1987. That's where I'm going to start our story tonight. In the top right, I don't know if you can read that, but it says, current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, the use of fossil fuels, electrical appliances, home and workplace air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable. Okay, suburban housing is not sustainable. This was said by Maurice Strong in his opening speech at the 1995 UN Conference on Environment and Development. So this is Ms. Brundtland. She's the former vice president of the World Socialist Party. Oh, good, we're getting a microphone. Thank you. I'll be able to have my voice tomorrow and see that. And what she says here is, consider the case in which 25% of the incremental income of the richest 1/5 of the population is redistributed equally to the others. Now, do you see this document on the right-hand side is Our Common Future? This is a report that was established at the World Commission on the Environment and Development. And this is better? And this is the precursor to Agenda 21.
Yeah. So
Sorry?
everybody knows, I was at the Ohio Township Association, and they use her report
Mm-hmm.
for community development.
We're getting there. That's in here.
But it's being done by Ohio State University.
It's in here. Yeah, we'll get there. Okay. So 1992. We have the UN Sustainable Development Agenda 21 is created. The first President Bush signed us on to this, so he was the first one to get us involved with Agenda 21. People a lot of times think Agenda 21 is a conspiracy theory because it sounds an awful lot like Area 51. But, you know, a conspiracy theory is only a theory until it's proven to be a conspiracy. Okay? You got that? All right. And speaking of, I have a video that hopefully, Skip, how do we play this on your thing here? And is the speaker turned
The Earth
on?
Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. HCON Res 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21 to be coordinated under the leadership of a specific office and the direction of a high-level government official. The resolution also urges the United States to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment and to support the creation of a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission headed by an Undersecretary General. Third and lastly, the President is urged to report to Congress on the progress made on with this action. HCON Res 353 is supported by the administration. I have been in contact with the appropriate offices of the State Department and have incorporated their suggestions into the resolution. The 71 co-sponsors of this measure include one-half the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and all of the House delegates to the Earth Summit. It is also supported by the major United States non-governmental organizations concerned with environmental issues. The Earth Summit presented world leaders with an opportunity that should not be lost. We must now embark on a new course that will sustain our planet and its resources for the benefit of future generations. This resolution calls on the United States to assert its leadership to achieve this goal. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thanks again to the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their recognition of the importance and timeliness of this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The promise of Rio, that is Agenda 21. The Rio Earth Summit is where they established Agenda 21.
Who was the president then?
That would be the first President Bush.
Agenda 21 was started because it was for the 21st century, that's why they.
Yes, it's the UN agenda for the 21st century. That's why it's called Agenda 21. Has anybody seen this or heard of a transect? This smart code, it's version 9.2. I want to point that out because you'll see that here in a second. I am borrowing this from David Frost's presentation. Do you guys know David Frost? He's in Medina County. He's very, very, I don't know, I wouldn't call myself the expert on this topic because he's probably more expert than I. So I borrowed this from his presentation, and I'm pointing this out because this document is used by many of our planning organizations, and in fact our local planning commissions may in fact have this in their library of resources. It would be a good question to find out. The reason this is important is because they're kind of reusing the term transect. What a transect actually is it is a cut or path through part of the environment showing a range of different habitats. Okay, so this is used by biologists and ecologists when they're studying the way, you know, our geology and our environment set up. Well, planners have taken this concept. So you see, I don't know if you can see, but this, the ocean, beach, primary dune, I guess that means fluffy sand, a trough, secondary dune, and a back dune, okay? This is exciting stuff. So they've stolen this concept, and this is what they're doing with planning. Now, do you see smart code? That's that document we just saw, the version 9.2, talking about a transect. Now, what they're talking about doing here is they have zones divided up. So you've got T1 is natural zone, T2 is rural, T3 suburban, T4 is general urban, T5 is urban center, T6 is urban core, and then 8D or SD, oh, that's special district. I'm not sure what that means, but it looks like a parking lot. So basically what the plan is this 1.6 succession, it means that
20 years after the approval of a regulating plan, so it could be a master plan created by our MPOs, like NOACA, each transect zone, with the exception of the first two, so you'll keep the natural zone, in fact, that'll grow larger. You'll keep the rural zones, which will get smaller, and I'll show you that in a second. Everything after that will be automatically rezoned to the next higher zone every 20 years. That's how they push us out of the suburbs and closer to the cities over time. And notice that T3, that's going to be the first one affected, that is the suburban zone. With me so far? Oh, we just got started. So this is the Agenda 21 logo. And I show you this for a couple of reasons. You'll see this again later on. But I want to kind of explain what it is. So they have the three main circles, social, environment, and economic. They're talking about justice, social justice, environmental justice, and economic justice. And I don't know if you can see, but where social and environment overlap, they call that variable. Okay? Where environment and economic overlap, they call that viable. And where social and economic overlap, they call that equitable. So if you have two of the three, it's either going to be equitable, viable, or variable, depending on which ones you have. What they want is ideally that gray, I just noticed they colored it gray, that's totally appropriate. The gray section in the center, where all three overlap, that's what they call sustainable. Okay? Now, I don't know about you, but environmental justice and economic justice, you know, we're talking about socialism, and they're trying to say that this is viable. And since when was socialism viable? And even with bearable, you know, let's say that we have social justice and environmental justice, you know, then that's bearable. Well, that's not good enough for me. I want to be happy. You know, I don't want to be in this little gray area that they have in the middle with sustainable development. Do you guys see the source at the bottom of the screen? Democrats against UN Agenda 21. This is not a partisan effort, guys. I mean, this should be Democrats and Republicans all recognizing the danger and fighting against it. That's actually a great source. If you want information about Agenda 21 or don't really know where to start, check out their website. Okay, so back to the timeline. So where are we? We're through 1992, I think, right? All right. Now we have good old Bill Clinton. You guys miss him yet? No. I don't either. So what he says, this is from a report on the President's Council on Sustainable Development. He says, we need a new collaborative decision process that leads to better decisions, more rapid change, and more sensible use of human, natural, and financial resources in achieving our goals. Now, in 1995, President Clinton signed an executive order, our favorite, to create the President's Council on Sustainable Development in order to harmonize U.S. environmental policy with the UN directives as outlined in Agenda 21. The executive order directed all agencies of the federal government to work with state and local community governments in a joint effort to reinvent government using the guidelines outlined in Agenda 21. And the reason they're having to come to the local level is because they know they would never be able to accomplish this from the top down. The UN would never be able to impose these restrictions on us. So instead, they bring it to the local level where, you know, people don't really pay attention, unfortunately, and they manage to implement things from the bottom up. That's why our MPOs like NOACA are so important. Again, just to point out, Agenda 21 is not a conspiracy theory. This is 1998, the Sustainable Development Challenge Grant Program. And this is a grant, by the way, from the EPA. See the logo up there? It's a step in implementing Agenda 21, the global plan of action on sustainable development. Again, this is from David Frost's presentation. I can't wait. What, 2 more years, guys? A year and a half? How much? Oh, boy. All right. Our friend, Mr. Obama, spends taxpayer dollars to try to get Netanyahu out of office. Yeah. Great. All right. So in 2009, President Obama starts to make significant steps towards this by creating the Partnership for Sustainable Communities. So remember the map I showed you where it had all the dots all over the place, and I said that there were grants from HUD, from DOT, from EPA. What he did was he created this partnership so that all three of them could work together more efficiently when giving out these grants. And just, you know, in case your eyes aren't already bleeding, I'm going to make your ears bleed because I'm going to read you this quote. In case you can't see it, you probably remember this from his candidacy back in 2008. We can't drive our SUVs, eat as much as we want, and keep our homes on 72 degrees at all times, whether we're living in the desert or we're living in the tundra, and then just expect that every other country is going to say, oh, okay, you guys go ahead and keep on using 25% of the world's energy, even though you only account for 3% of the population, and we'll be fine. Don't worry about us. You guys remember that, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so here's this map again. Those are the three logos at the bottom. So these are the Partnership for Sustainable Communities, now we know what that is, grants that they gave out between 2009 and 2013. NOACA. Who has never heard of NOACA? Two people in the back, okay. NOACA is the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the 5 Northeast Ohio counties, so Lake County, Cuyahoga, Medina, Lorain, and Geauga. If you live in a different county, you are probably still under an MPO, it's just a different one.
There's only 33 counties in it.
There are only 33 counties in MPOs, but 10 out of the 12 Northeast Ohio counties are part of MPOs. And by the way, they're all working together now, which we can talk about in a little bit. I feel like there needs to be some background music or something. Doomsday music. Okay, so this is the NOACA board representation. Skip was talking about boards and how they work.
Define NOACA so everybody understands.
It's the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. And they love their acronyms. And, by the way, they just started calling themselves NOACA. It's always been pronounced as NOACA, and now they're referring to themselves as NOACA. I don't know if they think it sounds fancier or more credible. I like to call them wacky NOACA. So this is the way their board is split up. Skip mentioned earlier there are 44 board members. You can see Geauga has 3, all right? So we're able to accomplish a lot, the 3 of us that are over there. Cuyahoga County, in contrast, has 21 of the 44, which means they only need, to grab a couple extra people, and they're easy to find, and they can pass whatever they want.
What percentage of dollars is Cuyahoga County bringing to the mix versus Geauga?
Skip, do you know that offhand? Do you have the, remember the list of all the dues that everybody paid? Do you have that on your thing?
Yeah, and
It's a larger portion. We don't pay, each county pays a different portion. And
well, they get 35 million into NOACA to manage for roads and bridges, and we get 2.
Yeah, but the dues, I think you asked about the dues.
Yeah, I'm looking at what is
dues, I
financially
think
the
there's stuff.
contribution, is it disproportionate? I mean, is their controlling that many positions on it disproportionate to the amount of money they're putting into it?
they distribute the membership representation by population.
Yeah, but it's the wrong
Yeah,
way
I
to
know,
look
but
at
the
it.
dues,
I
the
mean,
dues we
it
pay
has
are-
nothing to do with dues. Dues shouldn't buy you. It's like bribing people to get your federal tax dollars.
Hold on, Skip, you're wrong. We pay, what do we pay in the NOACA to belong
We
to
pay
NOACA?
31 million or $1,000.
$31,000 is what our dues are for our 3 seats.
That's right.
Cuyahoga, the last I read, Cuyahoga is in the rear 330-some thousand.
Well, they've caught
in
up.
back dues. Have they caught up?
They've kind of,
What is their
there are a
dues
few
annually?
cities that still owe, but
What's
So it's
that?
population driven.
it's population
Yeah,
driven, right? And this is the reason
there
that
are dues.
socialists keep trying to tell us that we live in a democracy. It's because of this. But when NOACA was first set up, there were the 3 commissioners from each county on the board. I think that was it, right?
That was it, yeah.
That was it. So it was set up more like a republic. You have the same number of representation from each county, doesn't matter, with population. But they've changed it, so now it's based on population, and this is what you end up with. And the commissioners, just a couple weeks ago, sent a resolution because, there are a lot of people who weren't happy that the engineer doesn't have a seat on NOACA, and that makes sense because they are supposed, well, here's the thing, they're supposed to be about roads and bridges. And as you'll see in the presentation, they are focusing more now on multimodal, so bikes, pedestrian walkways. So, one could make an argument that it's not as important to have an engineer on there because they're not even doing engineering type things, but they should be doing engineering type things. And either way, Geauga County should be able to have your engineer on the board. But with only 3 members, and by the way, NOACA dictates who those members are. So the commissioners would like to say, okay, well, let's rotate. Let's have 2 commissioners and the engineer. And then next year, the 2 commissioner spots will rotate, and they'll take turns, but at least there will always be the engineer on the board. NOACA won't allow that. This is what Skip was talking about earlier, how, the staff of these boards runs the show, when it's supposed to be the other way around. Okay, 2010, we have NOACA was the fiscal agent for NEOSCC. Anybody heard of NEOSCC? Northeast Ohio Sustainable Communities Consortium. They also call themselves NEOSC, because I guess that's easier to say. In 2010, the MPOs got together. So it was NOACA, AMATS, SCATS, and ESCAPE. Those are the 4 MPOs that cover 10 of the 12 Northeast Ohio counties. They all got together. They got a $4.5 million grant, federal grant, for the development of a regional sustainability plan. Remember we were talking about the plan earlier, the transects? So they created NEOSC, NEOSCC. The interesting thing about this is NEOSC included Wayne County and Ashtabula County in their plan, but neither of those counties belong to any of these MPOs. But they somehow got wrapped up in this anyway. So in 2012 then, once they got their money, they launched the Vibrant Neo 2040 framework for our future. The intention was to create a framework that would lead to a more economically and socially equitable future for the region. Guys, remember the 3 circles, the Agenda 21 circles? That's exactly what this is. And in the gray there it says Vibrant Neo 2040 will be a roadmap that needs to be followed. It will be a plan that we all need to see implemented. And we always heard when we were doing this is how Skip and I got to know each other, as we kept going to these workshops that Vibrant Neo 2040 was putting on, and NEOSCC was putting on. And they kept saying, oh, well, this is just a plan. We don't have the authority to actually implement any of this. Don't worry. It's just, we're spending $4.5 million on just a plan that we don't have the authority to implement. Well, they know full well that it was going to get implemented by the MP